Dear church, let's talk about being a preacher's wife. Hello and welcome to the Dear Church podcast. I'm your host, Chris McCurley. I'm excited about my guests, my good friends, Trey and Lee, almost regulars really on the podcast. Y'all been on here. I know Trey has more than a few times. Thank you guys so much for joining us. The marriage seminar gurus, the cool preacher. I asked my son one time who his favorite preacher was, thinking I would get me as the response. And he said, probably Trey Morgan and Wes McAdams. I was like, oh, okay. Well, that shows where I stand. But
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining us all the way from Childress, Texas.
Yes.
Big metropolis of Childress, Texas. Yes. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you're here to talk about, actually, we were joking off camera that Trey was just going to sit there and be invisible. To be honest, I wanted Lee more than I wanted Trey on this, but I want Trey to interject some things here and there because I want to talk about what it means to be a preacher's wife. And Lee, I'll tell you, I had the idea of Libby being on here with us too, but she is so terrified of the camera that I tried to tell her you won't even really know it's there, but she was too terrified of it. So it's just us.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand that.
So it's just us today, and I hope that's okay. But
yes.
So I have some things I want to ask you and kind of get your perspective and then have Trey weigh in and kind of interject some things as well. But, being a preacher's wife, I guess probably 30 years now in ministry, Trey, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
As long as we can remember, that's all we've ever done.
And you've been at Childress how long?
We've been here for 18 years.
Yeah, I knew it had been almost 20 years. Okay, so you've got enough experience here to talk about this for sure. So Lee, tell me, being a preacher's wife, how do you see your role in all this, in ministry and being a preacher's wife, all that? How do you see yourself?
I really look at it as a partnership. I feel like I try to be involved in areas that I need to be involved in.
Sure.
I'm a support for him, an encouragement for him. Hopefully, I can be, his sounding board. Somebody to vent frustrations to. But really, I just kind of see it as a partnership. And I hope that churches see that as well, that when they're getting a minister, they're also getting a minister's wife.
Yeah, it's a package deal, isn't it?
Yes.
So when you talk about that bouncing ideas off, sounding board and all that, Trey, how often do you do that where you say, hey, I'm working on a lesson here, and what do you think about this?
A lot, probably a lot more than she realizes, whether it's Vacation Bible School or sermons. Sometimes driving down the road, I'll tell her what my sermon is and say, what are your thoughts on this? But she's a fantastic sounding board on just ideas. There are times, honestly, where I'll bring up something, she'll go, that's not going to work, or you better do it this way if you want it to work, or that's going to get you in trouble. And I need that. I need somebody that I can talk to that can give me some constructive criticism and at the same time give me some encouragement because sometimes you don't get the encouragement that you'd like from everybody else, and it's pretty awesome when your wife says you did good today.
Yeah, and I like how you put that because I do the same thing, and I feel like Lee and Libby are very similar in that, I've talked to preacher friends of mine, and they talk about different things and interactions with their wives, and I've had preacher friends say, yeah, my wife, she really sets me straight, and she tells me, hey, that was horrible, you did a horrible job on your sermon. All that. I'm glad my wife doesn't do that. I think I would have a tough time with that. I like how my wife kind of is. She exercises verbal diplomacy and understands that there is a fine line between encouragement and criticism. Now, if I said something wrong, I want to know that, obviously.
Sure.
But I do respect greatly her opinion, but there are times, like you said, with VBS and ideas that you have, there's also times where I see things through man's eyes. I don't see them through a woman's eyes, and I need a woman's perspective on some things sometimes, right?
It is very, very important. And I think if you had a wife who just sat there and thought her job was just to criticize everything, that would be really, really tough to do what you do. And they could find plenty to criticize, but my wife does just such a good job of making sure that she focuses on a lot of positives, and it's just a good sounding board. We've been married long enough. I did a Bible class not long ago on a Wednesday night and kind of took off in a direction I didn't have in my notes a lot, and came up on a word in my head, and I thought, now, do I pronounce this way or this way? And I threw it out the first way, and I saw my wife's face and immediately know I had mispronounced that word. It was like, well, that's all right. She didn't have to criticize me. I just know I mispronounced that word.
She's she's your spell check, your censor, everything,
exactly.
Right?
Oh my God. I couldn't do ministry without her. That's the truth.
I know that when I'm preaching and I've got a story or an illustration in there that I really want to kind of tie things together. And sometimes it's a heartfelt illustration or whatever. I know when I look at my wife, you can read her face. I mean, everything's out there. And when I see her tearing up or whatever, I think, okay, I got it now. And sometimes there may be a confused look on her face, a befuddled look. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to wrap this around somehow and make it work. But so Lee, tell me, what have you seen as some of the challenges of being a preacher's wife? What do you think the biggest challenges are?
I think that, the clear one is that we kind of live in a fishbowl. That's, all eyes are on us, or it seems that way at times.
Specifically when you live in a small community.
In a small town, for sure.
Yes.
Where everybody knows,
Yes.
what the preacher's wife or the preacher's families or the preacher's kids did. And, and that can be a little tough to just know that everybody kind of expects you to.
That's right. And held to a little bit higher standard than everybody else, which is to be expected. That's kind of what we signed up for, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I think another challenge that we've seen for sure is that, ministers are on call pretty much 24/7.
Right.
And so you just kind of have to adapt to that. And, it can be tough when you have small children, which we're past that, but there were definitely some challenging times there when he just, we might have something planned and it's like, this really is an emergency and it takes precedence.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
And you kind of learn to, as you go in ministry, you kind of learn to know what's priority and what's not. And sometimes early in ministry, I didn't do very well at that. I thought everything was priority. And now I can kind of look at a caller ID and go, I don't have to answer this right now.
Right.
Or something along those lines. But, there are times when 10 o'clock at night, I have to go to a hospital or something. And
sure,
it's just part of it.
So Lee, have you had to kind of step in and play referee here and there and say, look, you're not balancing this time well. You need to spend more time at home. I mean, I'm sure you do that well, but have you had to do that?
I think so at times. But I think he, for the most part, like you said, it's taken a few years, but he's learned, to kind of gauge what's important and what can wait.
Yeah.
And what's really good, I'll throw this out there and then I'll let her talk some more. If we have church elders listening, this is really, really important. Church elders regularly, mine do it very well, check in.
Yeah.
They go, how are you doing on balancing family time and ministry? And there are times that my eldership tells me, hey, you got too many boats too many oars in the boat, whatever it is. And you need too many irons in the fire. You need to slow up and spend some time with family. And so the elderships and churches should regularly be checking on their ministers and their ministers' wives and youth ministers' wives, because nobody really checks on us all the time, and good, healthy churches check on them.
I agree. I mean, you guys can be investing so much in helping everybody else, marriages and family and all that, and your own is falling apart if you're not careful. And so I do. I think that's highly important. One of the things that kind of comes with the territory is criticism. I can remember as a high school basketball coach in the gym coaching, and my wife sitting up in the stands with my one daughter. I at the time only had one, and they're sitting up there, and everybody around her is yelling at me, and I'm a fool, I'm an idiot, I don't know what I'm doing. And she stopped coming to games. She just, she couldn't handle it. And some would say in preaching, you jump out of one frying pan into the other, leaving coaching to preaching. I don't see it that way. I've never seen it that way. But there is a fair share of criticism to go go around at times. Lee, how do you handle that when your husband is criticized? How do you help him through that too?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm being personally criticized if somebody's criticizing him, and
Yeah,
if they're criticizing him to me, of course I'm going to defend him.
right.
But yeah, I think I just try to encourage him and tell him that everybody's going to be a critic.
Yeah,
There's always going to be critics out there, and you just kind of have to take most of it with a grain of salt.
right.
Yeah. We one of the things that wives do well that Lee does very well is you can get a lot of criticism in any job, in any workplace, in any ministry. And maybe you get a lot of praise too, but sometimes we tend to focus on the critical things.
Sure.
And when you come home, thankfully, I don't get that. Home is my filling station. It's where I get my battery recharged, and I can come in, and if I need to vent, I can. But I can come in knowing that I'm not going to get beat up like I did in a men's business meeting or something along those lines, where I felt like all my ideas were shot down or something.
Right. Yeah, and talk about that a little bit. How good of a job do you do, and how do you do it, leaving it at the church? Like I know with my kids, I always had to censor myself to not bring up the negatives and all that. I didn't want them to hear from their dad all the time about the negativity within the church. And I'm sure you kind of feel that way, even though we share with our wives and vent to our wives. There's a sense where you got to leave it there, right? When you come home, how do you guys do that? What are some tips for doing that?
Well, we kind of do it the same way in a sense that there is negativity, but there's also very much positive. It's a lot like a marriage. Us and our church is a lot like a marriage, and I hope they focus on the good things that we do, and we try to focus on the good things that they do. But it is so wise, ministers who are listening to this, to listen to your words right there, because you can literally ruin your children by coming home and telling your kids all the bad things that church people are doing. And I've seen that in other ministers' lives, because they've come home and vented to their kids, or they've come home and spilled garbage
Mm-hmm.
to their kids, and their kids hate church now. They don't want anything to do with church because they were mean to my dad, or they're mean to my mom. They were critical, and you have to guard against that, and
Absolutely.
you cannot allow that to happen. And we try to leave things there, and still try to leave things there.
Guys, I remember when I was at Cassville, Missouri. It's a town of about 3,000, and the church was about 180, I think, average attendance. And I was standing up there one Sunday preaching, and my wife had our three kids in the pew, and they were all very small at the time. And Zane, you guys know Zane, he wasn't always the kind, respectable young man that y'all know him as. He kind of caused some issues in the pew a few times. And I can remember preaching one time and seeing my wife struggle with him and come down from the pew, kind of grab him by the arm and sit him down. Never missed a beat. I was still on task with the sermon and everything, and then walked back up in the pulpit. And it really brought to light the fact that, your wife is kind of a single parent in the pew, raising those kids. Y'all have 4 boys, and I love your boys, and I know they're good kids, but I know that they were boys as well. So talk about that a little bit, Lee, being a single parent in the pew, raising your kids and keeping them still at church while Dad was up there preaching.
Yeah, it definitely had a lot of challenges, and our boys were busy boys. I mean, I had to come with an arsenal of things that would keep them busy.
Sure.
All of the books and the stickers and the silly putty and whatever I could have on hand that would keep them occupied for 5 minutes. And I know if they ever really started acting up or crying, Trey kind of was expected me to get them out of there pretty quick.
Yeah.
Because he would be distracted.
I think sometimes parents, all parents, including preachers, just automatically think their kids probably bother people more than they really do.
Sure.
We always try to tell mamas now, it's like, your kids aren't bothering us. Quit worrying about it.
That's right.
But it does bother, and they are single mamas sitting there.
Yes. And thankfully, I had help. I had friends that were, they would let the older ones, hey, he can let him come sit with us so you can focus on the younger ones.
That's good.
I always had help, and that's another thing that Trey and I talked about. We want to encourage people that might be listening that if you don't have kiddos of your own, and you see, maybe the preacher's wife or any single mama in your congregation, ask if the kiddo can come sit with you and lend a helping hand. It's huge.
Yeah, that is huge. That's a really good piece of advice. I know we had that kind of thing too. We had a deacon that was a song leader that I think riled him up as much as he did try to settle him down. So you got to pick wisely there, don't you?
Yes.
But
we have stories.
Oh my goodness, Trey got a taste. We had a visiting missionary come in one time, and so Trey got a taste of what I dealt with, 3 times a week. And it's a pretty funny story.
I used to joke that I like to preach so I didn't have to sit with my kids during church. That's kind of our joke. I didn't have to wrestle the kids. I get a break from them. Get up and preach. But we had a visiting missionary come in, and Lee had told me, said, "Your Sunday with the kids, it's
your turn.
Your turn." And I said, "I got this. What's the big deal?" And I could have wrung every one of their necks. I mean, this was 5 minutes in. And that just happened that Sunday that missionary, you know how missionaries are. I love missionaries. Overtime, double overtime. And I wasn't sure who I was going to strangle first, the missionary or my youngest at the time.
Our 2-year-old, yeah.
He was strong-willed, and we had fought through the whole thing. And I finally looked at him. We weren't through yet. I looked at him, and he was frustrated with me, and I was frustrated. And I said, "Do you want me to take you outside and whip you?" And he looked up at me and said, "Yes, please."
Really? So this is Cooper.
Get me out of here.
He wanted out.
Wait, what? This is your youngest?
No. This was Connor at the time.
Okay, so Connor, I could kind of see that. Cooper, I was like,
our strong-willed child.
Yeah.
No, he's our strong-willed child. And I asked him, I said, "You want to take me?" I thought it was a threat,
Yeah.
"If you don't sit down, I'm going to take you out and whip you." And he said, "Yes, please."
Yes, I want out of your
But
path.
just let me out. I'll take a whipping. And I just remembered thinking, Lee needs a raise, whole lot more than what she gets for wrestling these kids every Sunday.
Well, I was going to say, as dads, we get our bluff in so that, before church, you better be good to your mama and all that. Sound like you tried to get your bluff in and he called you on it.
Yeah, boy, he did too. He did.
That's a great story. So if you're like me, Trey, there are a lot of things that I tell my wife in confidence. I almost tell my wife just about everything. You and Lee talk a little bit about the confidentiality aspect, because there are a lot of things that you got to keep secret, even from your kids. How do you guys handle that?
Well, we do just that. Confidentiality is just essential with church stuff and everything else. And, we know things about, we hear struggles. I counsel with people, and, there are times where I may do some counseling, and my wife knows I met with a family, and she's, and I'm like, "Well, let's pray about this because they're really struggling," whatever it is.
Right.
But confidentiality is just, most people who know me know that I don't keep secrets from my wife, but they also know that we don't go blaring stuff everywhere either.
Right.
We've been here long enough that people know we do ministry together, and you get me, you get her too, and vice versa. And so, confidentiality is a key, because there are a lot of things sometimes about people and things going on in church and even the community that you that you just keep your mouth shut, and you just don't say anything about it because it's kind of tough.
Yeah, you run credibility pretty quick, don't you?
For sure. And there have been times, that usually he tells me everything, but there have been times when, I just didn't need to know something because it might change the way I looked at that person.
Sure.
And so just for my sake, really, he would just choose not to maybe share everything with me.
Yeah, that's good too. Yeah, because, that can happen where you look at a person a little differently, maybe treat them a little differently, even if you don't intend to. Yeah, that's a good point too. I think it's also important to have friends in the congregation that obviously you don't share everything with, but that you can let your hair down with, so to speak. As a minister, there are those times where you come to church for an event or for even worship, and things that have transpired during the week, during the evening, that morning or whatever, and you've still got to be on, so to speak. And that's tough sometimes. It's tough to always be on as the minister and the minister's wife. And I think that it's just essential to have friends. Trey, you've met my friend Robert that comes with me on a lot of speaking engagements and stuff, just to keep me company. Robert is that kind of guy. I can let my hair down. We can talk about anything and everything. He doesn't hold me to some unrealistic standard because I'm a minister. He understands I'm a human being as well. It's not that I just completely go nuts, and act out of character, but it is good to have those kind of people. Talk a little bit about that, the importance of having someone in the congregation, or maybe a few someones, couples, friends, that you can completely let your guard down and be you.
Yeah, I really thought about this because back in the earliest part of our ministry, I had a minister's wife tell me, she said, that you're really not ever going to be able to have close friends, don't you?
Yeah.
And I was just taken aback by that because I thought, no, I really hadn't ever thought of that.
Sure.
But I don't think I agree with her because I have been able to make very close friends that, I'm perfectly willing to be myself and, let my hair down. And I think that's so needed because
Yes.
I can just imagine feeling so isolated or detached, if I didn't have somebody that I could just really be myself around. So it's very important.
Yeah.
And I don't think that comes quickly. If you're a new minister and you've moved to town, it may be a couple of 3 years
Yes.
before you have really begun to click with some friendships. And we have people that we can be Trey and Lee with, and not preacher Trey and his wife.
Yeah.
And that's just really good because I need to take my preacher hat, my minister hat off sometimes, and just be goofy Trey sometimes.
Yeah.
And it is just healthy that I can vent to a friend or to somebody else, and I don't have to worry about. I don't know how you can do it without. We feel like we're one another's best friends, and we rely on that. But we also need some other people in our world to kind of just have there for us.
Oh, absolutely. I remember in Missouri, I was playing golf with a friend of mine, a friend that I could let my hair down with, and I hit a bad shot. He was driving the cart. I hit a bad shot, and I got in, I sat down, and I took my hat off, and I slammed it down and put it back on, and he didn't think anything of it. Well, we had a church member that was playing too that I didn't know was out there and saw me from afar and just ribbed me about that and, just for forever. And I thought, that's the juxtaposition there. You got
That's
the one
exactly
guy that doesn't understand that you get frustrated playing golf and you don't pray after every bad shot. And then you've got your friend in the cart with you that totally gets it, And Lee, like you were just saying, I think folks in our congregation, should try to be that too. You're looking for that, but they're looking for that too. Is that, hey, I can be somebody you can confide in and you can let your hair down with. I think that's good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Lee, answer this question. What are some things specifically that you do to support your husband preacher?
I think that touched on him a little bit with that first question of how do I see my role as a preacher's wife?
Yeah.
I try to, not pick him apart. I try to encourage him and build him up, and just, be somebody that, of course, that he can let his hair down with and be totally himself with.
Yeah.
We don't put on any airs around each other for sure. So, yeah.
Well, let me throw out there, because I don't know that she realizes the role that she plays. I have seen, and you probably have too, I don't want to stress out the other ministers' wives who are watching this, but a minister's wife can make or break her husband.
Right.
That many good ministers have said, I'm out, because the wife has said, I just can't do this.
Right.
And when you have a wife that does ministry well, it blesses the ministry. It blesses the church you work with. And I have always felt that way. My wife is just such a support. She has always, we pray together. It's just good. I involve her in things. She wants to be a part of stuff. I think if I if I talked about things as if this is my ministry and my work, her feelings would be hurt because it's our work. It's our
Yes.
stuff that we do. And with us, you get a package deal. And I've drugged her to some crazy places and stuff. I've put her in some awkward situations. I have, whether it's hospital visits or, one night I got a call from a message from a random lady in town that said, I'm thinking about killing myself. Can you come over? And I said, who's there? And she said, nobody. And I said, well, I'm not coming by myself. She said, don't come if you're bringing your wife. And I said, I'm not coming unless I do.
Yeah.
I said, I just don't go any places without her. And this was midnight. And I drug Lee out and said, you got to get your shoes on. We're going to go see a lady who's about to kill herself. And she was like, okay. So, we're partners in crime sometime and doing things that, she steps up and talks to thousands of people every year at workshops, which she used to be very uncomfortable doing. But, God placed it on our hearts and in our world. And so we do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is a great ministry I want to talk about here in just a few minutes. I do want to kind of wrap up with this question, though. Lee, what are the greatest blessings for being a preacher's wife?
Trey touched on it a little bit. This life of ministry has totally pushed me out of my comfort zone because I am an introvert. I am a behind the scenes. That's where I'm comfortable. And
Sure.
I never, in my wildest dreams, imagined I would, stand up and speak to thousands of people at workshops or do podcasts or, write books.
Right.
But we just seem to keep finding new ways to serve and to minister to people. And that's been a huge blessing. The time that we have gotten to spend doing those things together has been a tremendous blessing to our marriage.
Yes.
And she's good at encouraging me. I mean, last year I was like, well, we had quarantine and Lee said, we need to write a book. We got time. And I said, I don't want to write a book. And she said, but this is the time to write a book.
Yeah.
And she pushed me on it. She pushed me hard and we did it. And I'm really glad we did because it's been a blessing in a lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. She said, I see that this is something that needs to get done. And I'm glad she pushed me on it.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people are glad she pushed you on it. I don't ever want to let you guys or any of our guests on the podcast get away without plugging what you're doing. I think one of the great blessings of this podcast has tried to be that we let our guests plug what they're doing because it's for the kingdom. It's good stuff. And so I don't want you guys to get away without plugging what you're doing. Now, I know it, but I want all of our viewers and listeners to know just about the Stronger Marriages, Stronger Family workshops, the books, the podcast. Please tell us everything, okay?
You take over.
Really? Okay.
It's your time to shine.
Okay. God has really just opened some doors, and the church and Childress that we work with sees it as one of their mission works, and they tell us, go do it. And about 12 to 14 times a year, we're doing workshops all over the U.S., marriage workshops, family workshops, very well attended. It's been incredible. We stay booked up about 2 years out. We have written 2 books. Both have done really, really well. And we just kind of started podcasting because we felt like it was another way to get the message out about healthy marriages and families. And we're just honored that people keep showing up. And we're going to do this until God shuts the doors. And when he does, we'll find something else to do. Yeah. But he has just thrown the doors wide open in this little marriage ministry. And we have just gone everywhere and continue to do so and enjoy it tremendously. You can find more about us at TreyandLea.com, TreyandLea.com. Great. Awesome. And I want to tell our viewers and listeners that if they need any other information or if they have a question specifically for Lee and Trey to let us know, you can email me at chris.mccurley@rippleoflight.com. I'll make sure that Trey and Lee get the email or the question that you're asking. Any other information you're wanting, I'll make sure that they get that. And of course, they can reach you at treyandlee.com, as you said. And remember, Lee is L-E-A. I think, a lot of times that gets misspelled, or we hear you called Leah a lot, which is, I guess understandable. But we want to thank everyone for tuning in.
Trey and Lee, thank you so much for joining me today. This was awesome.
We're glad.
Our
Thank you
pleasure.
for having us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. This was great. And I hope that our viewers and listeners will continue to tune in and share the news about the podcast. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Sincerely, Chris.